Hello, hello, hello. What's up, Mr. Gingrich? Sorry, Gingrich.
Yeah, anyway, insult me on the top of the
Oh
show.
man, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm I'm frustrated, man. Today's back to work day, and I don't get to go back to work.
yeah, I think it's definitely a enthusiastically optimistic title to our program tonight, which I think is just fine because people could use a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our special discussion episode about the rollout, getting back to work. The task force has put together a pretty looks looks to be a pretty agreeable plan to everybody. At least the media couldn't come up with any reasons to take a huge steaming dump on it right away, at least. So it seems to me that it's beyond the point of politics. I mean, I could discuss the politics of the Democrats screwing with the Small Business Association loans. I mean, we could talk about stuff like that. But earlier, I had texted Obi about coming on the show tonight to talk about the real world impacts of being in a state like New York and having to navigate, essential versus non essential in the industry that he's in. It just so happens that he's available tonight to take over the helm,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes it easier for me to turn him into a interviewee as opposed to an interviewer. So I have more questions for him than he probably does for me. So
Okay. Shoot.
we, yeah, I mean, you watched the press conference today,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure, at least I hope you did.
I did.
You got a taste of what the task force put out there. You got a taste for how many states are feasibly going to be able to push right into phase one and maybe even halfway into phase two before the end of this month. Not going to be New York. Not going to be PA for me. As it doesn't look like Virginia or Maryland or California are going to be part of these operations. So tell us first, if you don't mind. I mean, just we don't keep many secrets here in the fam, and everybody knows what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because we've taken endless rides to work with you, and we've listened to your good days and your bad days. So, give us a mini trip over the last 30 days, the ups and downs, and how you've navigated it, your bosses, the projects. Before we get into starting up work again, what's it been like for the last 30 days for a regular guy who the job is there? It's just a matter of, are you allowed to get there? Or is your boss going to let you get there? Is he limiting other people that are allowed on site? I mean, just give us a feel for what it's been like just trying to live with this for the last 30 days.
Okay. So a month ago, everything was completely fine. Jobs were lined up for the next 3, 4 months, easy. Everything was going fine. And then, you hear these little rumblings of, oh, there's some virus or something or other. And then Governor Cuomo, I live in New York, Governor Cuomo comes out with an executive order and says only essential businesses can be open. And when I first saw that, I was like, what does this mean? And I looked, and it turns out I do construction work. I work for a subcontractor. We do residential, mostly residential high end construction, and we were quote unquote essential. So we're like, okay, everything's good. Everything kept going for another week or two. And then they changed the executive order. Either they changed it or they finalized it. And now it turns out only one worker can be on a job site at a time.
Hmm.
So if there's one painter in one room 200 feet away on the other side of the job site, no one's living there, it's a renovation, the person is in another country that owns it. If there's one painter on the other side of the house, technically there can't be me doing tile work in the bathroom on the other side of the house, 200 feet away, completely alone, separated. And
Which, as we know, makes absolutely no
it
sense
makes
because
no sense because you can go to
we
Target. You can go to
you can go to
Target.
Target with for most without a mask on
You can go to
until
the gas
recently and all
station.
that other stuff. Yeah.
So,
So tell me about this. I mean, every contract, not every time, but almost every contract that a homeowner signs with a contractor, has some built-in dates,
mhm,
for what they allow, and your target dates for completion, and maybe some overrides on some cost issues if something happens where you need to do
mhm.
something additional in the planning stuff. So tell us, have you run into any of that? Has your boss run into any? I'm going to need an extension here. I'm not going to be able to get this job done
And that's
because I only have one
not
guy at a
the
time.
problem because it was jobs that we were just finishing, and then jobs that were just about to start. So my boss is a subcontractor, and he
Yeah.
works for general contractors mostly. That are the general contractor hires they have a couple carpenters that work for him, and then they hire an electric crew, plumbing
Well, sure,
crew, a
yeah, yeah.
painting crew.
The general contractor signs the agreement with the homeowner, and then, but he's responsible for the subcontractors getting the job done on time as well. So, have you
Correct.
had any issues with any of that, or is just everybody understands what's going on, and you know,
Well, everyone wants to work, but everyone's worried because there's a $10,000 fine
yeah, yeah,
if the
that's
health
worse than missing a
department.
contract date.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
all the customers are going to understand. It's like, what are you going to do? It's by law. It's
Mhm.
like they're not going to try to sue you if you said, look, here's the law, executive order. What can I do? And you can't. So the first time it's a warning, and two of the job sites that we were on, one of them, a neighbor called and said, a Karen, a nervous Nancy called and said, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, there's four people at the job site right now," and so that job got shut down, and then another one got shut down.
So, who did that? Was that a county official, a local official, or an
I
actual police
wasn't
officer?
there. That was another job that my company was on, or the company I work for was on.
Yeah.
But I assume it was either the cops or the health department, county for
Yeah.
sure, or maybe it's the city because it was the city of Poughkeepsie, I think. So maybe it was the city.
Yeah, they generally have more people per capita to send out for these types of violations and stuff than
Right.
counties, especially in rural areas.
the The last job I was working at, even for the last 2 weeks of the said rules being in place, the contractor didn't care. He wasn't worried about because it was like a house in the middle of nowhere, and they weren't worried about anyone calling or anyone showing up. And we actually got a letter from their doctor saying,
Mhm.
please let him work because the guy's in Florida and he's undergoing cancer treatments, and he needs the house to get finished in New York so he can move back.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's enough common sense solutions to that.
It's funny, I listened
You
to
know,
Cuomo in his press conference today, and he says, "Oh, we're going to extend." He's like, "We have to be smart about can you work and not, can you work and social distance?" But then he extends it for another month across the whole state with no exemptions. No, there's no complaint department. It's just that's it. Yeah.
yeah, we got a here we have a little different situation. We have a liberal asshat for a governor like you do, but we have majorities in the chambers.
Hmm.
So we passed a House, oh, I'm sorry, Senate Bill 613 just a couple of days ago. Could have even been Monday, and now he's not signing it. He's not signing it. And the particulars on our state is if he doesn't sign it in 10 days, it becomes what they call a pocket veto, meaning he can kind of duck the excuse of vetoing it by hand. And yeah, I don't think he's going to sign this bill into law, which is going to allow just simple stuff like construction to begin again. He had construction under non-essential. We have like a title lending is suspended. We got mortgage people doing refis that are suspended because they won't allow a single appraiser in an empty house to walk through. It just it doesn't really make any sense at all. It's like borderline half-wit Whitmore, Michigan stuff, which I know people in Michigan are going nuts. I
Mhm.
know North Carolina, Virginia have also had some protests at the state capitol. Ours in Pennsylvania is scheduled here Monday. I mean, it's just a lot of people saying there's no fine surgical tool being utilized by the government. There's just this blunt hammer where they're just coming down on everything.
Mhm.
It doesn't work. I mean, if you want people to be responsive, we have to find a way to let people get back to work. And certainly construction and all types of these regulatory issues that we deal with lending institutions and real estate business stuff. You got to let that stuff continue because it's
Yeah.
contingent upon such a small number of people working on it. You could literally have one person working in an office. You could literally have a slot to drop off paperwork, notarized paperwork. You can literally have a single appraiser go through with like little surgical booties on and a mask and gloves and appraise the house so they can get refinanced at the low interest rates that we have right now. I mean, literally stopping commerce
Mhm.
in some of these states. And I just listened to before we jumped on here. I put Hannity's what's becoming his nightly The Great One uh, selection where he brings on Levin and Levin goes off, shaking in anger and screaming, hitting a decibel that a woman would be lucky to hit. And his latest missive was about the Commerce Clause and how some of these laws or executive orders or whatever the hell they're trying to do are basically violative of the Commerce Clause. But the Commerce Clause, as you know, well, that's governed by Article 1, which is Congress. So this Congress won't even re-up the small business loan that's exhausted the $350 billion to keep people on a payroll. So what makes you think Nancy Pelosi is going to take up our cause and help us clarify some of these laws for violating interstate commerce? There's nothing the president can do individually against that. So again, I'm just kind of wondering I don't know. I'm kind of wondering what Mark Levin is doing because it's like a third appearance where he's gotten really irate and talked 10 minutes straight. Hannity doesn't interrupt him, but his points really seem like they missed the mark.
I, I watched a little bit of Hannity. I missed that, but I've seen the last two, and I know what you mean. I just people are really frustrated and fed up, and we're seeing 22 million people out of work,
Hmm.
and like you said, there's like a hammer that the governor of New York and other states are using. And New York City, I don't know if they should open those construction jobs with 100 people on them. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah, well, what do you think about De Blasio saying that this is like a July 4th issue for New York City? As a New Yorker who derives a lot of natural offset from your tax liability from the money that comes in from New York City into your state budget, I mean, what's your thought that you might be called for or called on to pick up some of that shortfall with a tax increase? Because you know how Albany works. They have to take money out of everybody's pocket, and they won't just do it to the
Oh,
city.
yeah. Have fun squeezing water from a rock.
Yeah, yeah. I fear that that's what the Democrats are holding out for politically. There's just it's really a weird stance, a weird hill to die on for Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to say that this extremely successful SBA program is going to stop cold. Businesses are going to fail, collapse, collateralized damage all over the place, and all of his collateral damage, rather non-collateralized collateral damage, is just going to start falling all over the place like dominoes because they refuse to just basically add on a single strikeout line in the current bill of the CARES Act that says 600 billion instead of 350 or whatever. I mean, really, they won't even let that happen. So
Doesn't make
I
any
really don't
sense
think
to me.
they're going to give it up until they get a bunch of money to backfill New York's budget holes, California's budget holes, and the rest of America. I don't think it's going to tolerate that much longer.
So what's going to happen?
Well, I mean, we got these. Here's the interesting part: we got the blue states that are holding it up almost exclusively here. We got some rhino governors in Massachusetts and Maryland that are joining the ranks. But for the most part, for the most part, we're looking at, okay, can we drive up the economy using the red states? And the answer to that is primarily no. Our two largest states that are Republican run are Texas and Florida, and that's nothing to shake a stick at. It's or nothing to ignore either, but it doesn't, both Florida and Texas don't add up to California's GDP contribution. So
Mm-hmm.
when you take the 1 and 2, which is New York after California, it's just like it's really hard to ramp up your economy in Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas. Really, what do you? I mean, especially when we have this strategic battle of pricing going on over oil.
Mm-hmm.
So in these red states, most of the jobs that we have are based in the good paying jobs are based in the energy sector. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we've got like this perfect storm. I prefer to call it a perfect shit storm. And we've got a lot of people, as we know, unemployed, and that number is going to exceed 30 million. And they can't take advantage of low interest rates. They can't take advantage of home prices falling. If you've got money socked away, you're going to buy, right? I mean, the blood in the streets, buy. But as we know, this country is over leveraged in personal credit debt and corporate credit debt.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a offset there because the rates are going to be lowered. They're going to work with everybody to try not to default on their loans and all that other kind of thing. But honestly, God, the awkward part about this whole thing is that we have this massive, massive federal liquidity. And I'm going to go ahead and block Moscow Mitch, which is like too easy, dude. Too easy to block you.
Okay.
So anyway, that's a Periscope block. So anyway, my point in wanting to talk to you was not just the anecdotal stuff about it almost feel like it's going to be a day-to-day thing now, watching the hospitalization numbers, watching the infection rate numbers. You're almost tying your livelihood to counting on your state health department giving the feds accurate data so that you can navigate this phase 1, 2, and 3 in New York. And how much trust, faith do you have in the Department of State or the health department from Cuomo? Tell us a little bit about how you think Cuomo's handled this, but then also tell us about how much you trust him.
Well, I assumed Cuomo would be the worst of the worst. But actually, compared to Governor Hitler in Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
I can still go to Target and buy seeds and garden hoses. I can still
Yeah,
cut my lawn. The state parks are still open.
you could still get a car seat if you had a
I
newborn.
could still get a car seat if I had a newborn.
Is she? Is she? I mean, in your opinion, is not to interrupt you, but just before I lose that train of thought, is Whitmore like the worst governor since like George Wallace? I mean, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really think she might actually be. I think Blagojevich was better and spent 10 years in jail.
No, I mean I don't trust Cuomo at all. Back to your point, but at least he has been a little tiny bit better. Even better than Massachusetts. Massachusetts is crazier than New York, and Massachusetts has a Republican governor.
Well, as Trump rightly
Supposedly.
calls it, Literally calls him a rhino right there in the middle of the press conference, which I kind of like.
But in Massachusetts, you can only walk one direction on the sidewalk, and they give you a ticket if you walk in the wrong direction. I guess
Yeah, I
at
think
least
it's
you
a
can
good.
leave your house, but
I think it's a good Americana lesson on federalism. It's a good Americana lesson on constitutional authorities between Article 1 and 2, and certainly 10th Amendment arguments, which people are trying to make. And then you throw in, like Levin is trying to throw in, a commerce clause in there, which really does make a lot of sense, but that's only when Congress at a national level feels that the states are doing something. Most of the research I've done on it over the last 24 hours was I went back to look at obvious stuff because there's really not a lot of public health issue determining in case law from the Supreme Court on the commerce issue, but there is a lot on segregation during the civil rights battles of the day,
Mhm.
where you know you had laws that were just not fair laws, and they were essentially inhibiting interstate commerce, and the court occasionally had the balls to stand up and say that. But in the end, it's an Article 1 authority in Congress, and I don't think we're going to get any unity out of Congress anytime soon.
Mm-mm.
So I think that Trump has the bully pulpit. He certainly has a set of state of emergency, national emergency declaration purse strings, which
Mhm.
exist outside of Congress, that he can use to be a little punitive if he wants to be. Dangerous
Mhm.
game politically. But if he makes a determination that the CDC comes back or the NIH comes back to him and says, New York is actually ready to go to phase 2, but they won't, they refuse. Well, then you do what the federal government does, and you start holding back grants, you start holding back highway money, you start holding back public health funds until they do what you want to do.
Now, was there
And that's the
anything?
one way to do it.
Sorry, was there anything
Mhm.
in the guidelines released today? I remember they had originally talked about maybe even getting into the county level. Did they? Was there any talk about that as far as phases, or was
Oh
it
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
state?
yeah, yeah. That's definitely that's Dr. Birx pointed out that we're going to use our existing model, which is our influenza model, which is already up every year online for counties and state health departments to use, and we're using that as a way to track, where the spots are, how many cases there are. And this time, though, we're actually going to have to drop military, medical personnel, and CDC people on the ground to try to stop it right in its tracks. Whenever you get a flare, particularly in a metro area. So if you get one of these randomized community spread in a metro area in Texas or even Iowa or something, they're just going to drop in by helicopter and start throwing up hospital tents and really tamp it out right there through contact tracing and things like that. Because we know when we start opening these things up, I mean, it takes simple human critical thinking or basic mathematical elements to introduce as fact that if you have 93% of the country locked down, historic mitigation efforts, and you ease those, certainly in some areas there's going to be an outbreak of it. I mean, it's
Mhm.
virtually impossible for that not to occur. It's
Mhm.
going to occur. The important thing is to get there, get it shut down as quickly as possible. Let there be no confusion about it. Let there be no, oh, we haven't tested 400,000 people in the metro area. Get there right away, test everybody right away, contact trace everybody right away. You can do it now, but you won't be able to do it 30 days ago. You couldn't do
Mhm.
it. That's what makes phase 2 a little bit different. Um, yeah, don't blame me on that one, Jen. That my wife has that responsibility
No,
to,
but
to,
my
to
point was, if the governor Cuomo, my governor, if he says we're not opening up until the 15th, but certain counties in New York, upstate New York, easily qualify for that first tier, shouldn't, I mean, I guess Cuomo wins and we just have to wait until New York City is clean, or what? What the
Well, it's a
heck?
Cuomo de Blasio fight. I mean, really, if you think about it, isn't it? I mean, that's his fight with his own mayor then.
Well, it's a fight
Which,
with the residents upstate and Cuomo.
yeah. I mean, where does Trump fall into that, you know?
That's what I was wondering, if there's federal guidelines for that. He's just not going to go that.
Well,
I mean, they're going to surge resources where it needs to be, but there's only so much the feds can do to try to strong arm Cuomo to open up
yeah.
upstate, say where I live.
I want to briefly interrupt here because Big Ralph is saying 56,000 people have died from the flu this season, and it's obvious that's not correct. Um, the flu season is counted over a 2-year period, not a 2-year period, but a two calendar year seasonal. Um, 24,000 have been identified that by the CDC that died from the flu, influenza A or B strain. Up to 62,000 has been amended to show how many people on top of that have died from COVID-19. So there's this real incessant need for people to minimize the death that has already occurred. And I'm fascinated by it. And so you realize how quickly we've absorbed the amount of death that we have. And mainly it's in your area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you take away New York and New Jersey, and none of this stuff would have, I mean, we wouldn't be where we're at, to be
Right.
honest with you. We wouldn't be where we're at as a country. We probably never would have shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, about half the cases are coming out of New York. If you add New Jersey, it is over half the cases.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrific, the amount of death. And people are they're throwing out these numbers from 6-month flu seasons. Okay, I guess, but you realize 30,000 people died as a result of the invasion of Normandy. And that was like a total of like a 3-week campaign, 4-week campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've lost the equivalent of the Normandy soldiers that died. So is Trump a wartime president or not? He says he is. He took
Seems like
wartime
he is.
authority.
Yep.
So I'm going to say he's a wartime president. Matter of fact, he lost the equivalent of Normandy, and he lost them in a month and a half. It's insane to lose that many people. It rattles the country to the core. So I think you have to recognize that and not minimize it all the time. All these people want to do is minimize. I don't think that helps anything. My point is, we got hit hard. We got hit in the balls really hard. We did the right thing. And thank God we did. Thank God we shut that country down, China, from coming in here January 31st.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that they stopped people from traveling out of Wuhan, but allowed them all to leave Wuhan to go to Milan and Florence and Italy. And then from there, it just spread like wildfire all over Europe. I mean, China really is now complicit in mass murder. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this could be considered a war crime.
I think so.
And they have the WHO facilitating that. And you've got world scrutiny now, which I think is absolutely a necessity at this point. But the last thing, if you're trying to help Trump, uh, again, Ralph, I'm on the CDC website. Okay. There's 24,000 confirmed deaths from influenza that they know of. They had to stretch that up to 62,000 because they're including the deaths from the strain of the coronavirus.
Mm.
It's right there. It's right there in front of me.
That's what Dr.
Influenza
Birx was
testing
talking
across may
about
be
too.
higher than normal at this time of the year because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Estimates reflect increase in testing due to the COVID pandemic. Can we stop arguing about what makes people want to minimize this, Obi? We know that we got past. We're hopefully on the downside of this. But in
Mhm.
your opinion, what makes people just want to think that this would have been so much better if we didn't mitigate? You're a pretty smart guy. How would New York have? What would New York numbers be if they just decided, fuck it, keep schools in, businesses open, sporting events, Broadway shows? If you've lost that many people in New York in 38 days, what would it have been if you just did mitigate it all?
I think people are more annoyed that you can't go to certain stores, but you can go to others. Gets under my that's what gets me frustrated. Like, okay, I can understand we probably shouldn't go to a basketball game.
Hmm.
I can get that. But you're telling me I can go to Target, but I can't go to a Bed Bath and Beyond and
Yeah, but
be just as
that's not really the causation of mass death, Obi.
I know, but
So
that's what
so
we're all frustrated about.
I'm asking you as a person who lives in New York, what do you think your state death total would be without mitigation at all?
Oh, I don't know. 10 times more?
It, at least 10 times. I mean, in my opinion, not even a scientific background, I can tell you that at least. I mean, and it would obviously have poured that much quickly over into, the neighboring metro areas into Philadelphia. I'd be fucked. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because we're only so far away from Philadelphia. New York took the brunt of it. Man, they took the brunt of it, and I got to say they were latest. If you look at California, California was on their shit pretty quick about stamping shit down. Newsom was like, "Boom, you're at home. You're not moving."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they shut down San Francisco and then LA before de Blasio even shut down a single school in New York.
Now, to be fair, California is a completely different scenario than New
No,
York.
I get the geographic differentials and all that other bullshit, and the matter of fact, the weather's different, which will actually climatic responses to the virus actually are going to factor into all this stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the fact that the density of New York is just unheard of. I mean, other than like Tokyo and Beijing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, people be interested to know that they're all looking at Japan and saying, "Wow, Japan did an incredible job on this." Well, today Abe had to come out and say, "We made a mistake. We're quarantining the whole country."
Huh.
They're having an outbreak outside of Tokyo. Their country is in a bad situation. They want to shut it down now. The Philippines, they have flared up again in a big way. South Korea is having reemerging cases. China, we know, is having reemerging cases. So I'm more interested in Europe at this point, and seeing how they're getting on the downside of this mountain of death and disease, and knowing that we were a week, in some cases two, behind Italy, that it could have been that much worse for us. So I am more. I don't think people give enough credit to the American people, because I think everybody out there has done what my family's done, my neighbors have done. I mean, in my neighborhood, Obi, I'm telling you, nobody goes anywhere. I mean, I don't even know how they get their food. I mean, it's like nobody's even grocery shopping. I mean, they're riding bike by themselves, or they're jogging by themselves and all that other shit. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you, people have done a absolutely stupendously incredible job of mitigation. I think that's happened all over the country, and that's how I think we've kept our numbers down. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can the virus be deadly as hell in New York, New Jersey, but not the rest of the country? It's the same virus, same genome. If you give it a little room to breathe, you can, mitigate and you can live. New York is just a victim of its own population and density. So Shireen's dropping a $20 in the super chat saying, I don't understand how you seem to think it's sustainable for Dems in Congress to keep on refusing to add. Uh, Clearly, you're not thinking that I think it's sustainable because I don't think it's sustainable. But I assume you're just saying everybody in general. Isn't it the same pressure that was on them to pass it the first time? How is it different? Well, the first time, you got to remember, Obi, we had two. Remember, phase 1 and 2 that we gave to hospitals and we gave to on the ground
Yeah, one was
uh,
like paid for
responders.
testing, right? And
Yeah,
one was for
testing,
hospitals.
and they were essentially single-digit billion-dollar bills. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Phase 3 was like a tsunami of money, and it
Yeah.
just kept growing and growing and growing, and we just crushed them. All they could get in was the museums and this Kennedy Center, and it was just a complete blowout. It was
Hmm.
just 1985 Bears against the Patriots. I mean, there was no win for them. They had no. They're there, so they want another bite of that apple. So I don't know.
So who's
I
gonna
don't
crack
know to
first?
answer
I
your
guess.
question.
Who's gonna
Hmm?
crack first? Someone's gonna have to crack because we're gonna have to do either fill up the SBA now or just include it in phase 4 in a month. I mean, that's not gonna work out so well.
Well, phase 4 is I think you're right. I think, but are the American people watching in a way that they normally would be? Because I think it's one of those look over here things. We're talking about the virus all the time, and Congress isn't even in session.
Hmm.
So it's really hard to fixate on what they're not doing or doing. And I think that that's why Trump's brilliant, um, bringing down the hammer on the fact that he does have the Article 2 authority to adjourn both houses, and that's like a poke in the finger in Mitch's eye because it really doesn't matter about the House. It's the Senate that he can do his recess appointments, which they'll only last till the end of the year. But so what? That's all he cares about at this point.
Hmm.
So I think it was a great idea. I hope he does it.
What are the odds you think he's gonna do it?
We'll see if Mitch kind of breaks down on some of this and gets Schumer to say, okay, well, we'll move on some of these people if he doesn't adjourn. But how
Hmm.
are they going to sue and win in Supreme Court for something that's expressly allowed under the Article 2 is not going to happen. Answer a couple questions before we get too far behind. To the Republic, Sliders asking anyone can do the math on an index card. Cases double every week, hospitalizations double every week, deaths double every week. Not hard to understand what happens when it's not mitigated. I completely agree with you. It's this notion that it would disappear like a fart in the wind really is is a new one to me. Living, not existing, wants to know, how many are dying and are going to die from the shutdown that were never sick with the virus. I think that's what Trump is talking about. You know, we've got mental health issues, we've got drug abuse, we've got domestic violence, we've
Yeah,
got some issues out
I
there.
mean, talk about how many people in the third world are gonna die if there's a global depression, die of hunger.
Well, that's an even better point. I mean, if we're not ramped up to be able to do what we normally do, and have people make money off of selling us products through exporting, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people all over the fucking world that are going to die. That's a very good point. Nobody's talking about that, Obi. But to this living, non-existing point, what they're not thinking of, and this is something I know because I've been working in government for a long time. But um, what we're seeing now is this indirect benefit of something that's not very good for social and public health by shutting down. We have dropped down every other mortality column. I mean, we really have. I mean,
Mhm,
we have probably saved 10,000 to 20,000 traffic accident lives
mhm.
over the past 30 some days. A lot of other infection deaths that occur in hospitals from elective surgeries, they're not happening. Other infections that occur in hospitals for routine visits that are not necessary, they're not happening. I mean, I've even heard that there are less heart attack deaths right now,
Mm-hmm.
which seems odd to me because you think everybody's sitting around sedentary, stressed out, eating. So we are actually going
Well,
to come out
once they go back
with a
to
lot of
work,
people.
then they'll get the heart attack.
Then they'll get the heart attacks. You're right. But these other people don't. They don't think in a global sense, and I can't blame them because they're not they're not made to do that. My good buddy George from the left coast, Eureka. I finally got on during a live session. Great work to Obi, and quarantine is sequestered in Folsom, not the prison, but close. Yeah, and George is a good friend of mine from California. Always cheers me up, and Obi has followed in your path, George, and sending games for my kids to play with me. So thank you for motivating Obi into that, because we got them all in tonight. We got Uno, Crazy Eight, Chicken Foot, and of course the French race car drive. I've got to. If I had sons, they would love this game.
Yeah.
But giving them all these race car analogies, they're like looking for some other analogy. They just want to, they just want to win. To be honest with you, but Adam, what about adjournment? Yeah, he said he would adjourn under constitutional authority. That he would adjourn both chambers, which I don't remember ever seeing a president do, but he has the right to do it. Quick question, Joby. I'm going to catch up here before I catch back up with you.
Okay, no, that's fine. Someone is saying on Twitch that Lindsay sounded like he was cracking, maybe. You know anything about that? I don't, probably on the funding maybe or something. I don't know.
I didn't. I know he's getting really pissed off about the wet market shit. He really is getting out of hand on that. I mean, but I think there's a little bit of jealousy because Tom Cotton has really emerged as the superstar now because he's been after China forever, and Cotton was the first one to get the intel a while ago on this Wuhan lab, and when he said it, they basically crucified him, and now we've gotten some intelligence proving him right. So Tom Cotton's going to have his moment in the sun, and sorry, Lindsay, you'll have to live with it.
Maybe Lindsay can do something about that FISA stuff, or is that just put on hold until all this gets figured out?
Well, I don't know. We've got a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes on that subject matter. People are really starting to have expectations that something's going to happen. I am not one of them.
I don't know. Every once in a while, you see something from like Catherine Heritage, maybe like, oh, there's new declassified proof that Comey and Mueller knew about so and so in 2016, and the Russian government knew that Christopher Steele was looking for dirt on Trump.
Yeah.
All this other stuff, and it's I just
and
haven't had time to pay attention to it.
Yeah, and I still can't connect that intrigue with criminal activity. So you've got to find the statute, you've got to find something in there, and I think that at bare minimum you're looking at what, maybe lying to Durham or to Horowitz if you were interviewed, or I really don't see where you're going to get into espionage or anything like that.
So there's not going to be a day of the rope.
Oh, Jesus.
Did you see that?
Which is even.
Did you see Roger Stone? He got denied his new trial.
Yeah, I don't think he's too worried. I think he sees his pardon is coming in a matter of months, and he may serve maybe a month or two in jail before the election. But I wouldn't get too worried because for Roger Stone, that's, like I said before, that's another. He can get a prison tat done with like a paperclip and a lighter.
Yeah.
And come out and tell a story about it.
That'll be a nice chapter in his next book.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know. I've just
Patriot Uprising is a pretty interesting account tonight. What part of cooking the books is not obvious? Anyone who bases their decisions on the numbers these Democrat governors are showing is an idiot. Okay, well, they just called Donald Trump an idiot. I tend to go long periods of time without even being tempted to call Donald Trump an idiot, and simply not the way it works. Every death at one point or time or another before being cremated or interned temporarily or permanently is being tested to see if COVID is present. If COVID is present and they died of a heart attack, if they died of
are you sure
respiratory
about that?
distress, if they died, yeah, every single one, even the ones that are being buried on the Hart Island are temporary burials. They're not being buried there. They will be tested. Matter of fact, we already had an infection from Hart Island from one of the prisoners who were burying the bodies. This idea that that Cuomo was adding 3,700 deaths. No, what really happened was he took 3,700 deaths off of the total of what was happening in New York. Now they're finding out that many, if not most of them, had COVID-19. And now they're having to go back and adjust it because they had it. And so you've got this issue occurring. You've got it, all across the world. You've got Italy and Spain, and they're saying that they have yet to even test a bunch of people that are dead at home, they're still at home. They're just locked in their houses. I mean, the chances that we're underestimating the death is almost nil. The chances that overestimating is almost nil. The chances that we're underestimating them is pretty high. But what does it matter? See, here I go again, asking people if New York lost an average of 2,200 people a day over the last 3 days, and it was really 1,890, where does that put us?
Still the
Are we
number one
rolling out?
killer in America
Are we
over
rolling
those
out? Are
3
we going
days.
to a Yankees game? Are we going to a Yankees game now? What makes people feel better about trivializing or making conspiratorial arguments about everything? I mean, you do know the CDC is involved. It's not like the CDC is not involved in every particular northeastern New York, New Jersey metro area death. It's not as if they're like, oh, somebody died, huh? Okay, I'll put this number on the chalkboard. This is what they do. They have to know how many people have died. They have to know what underlying conditions they had. This is part of what is going to play a factor into how we roll out our reopening as a country. So if you're going to attack the metrics of death, then you are attacking the Trump federal administration, because no one has more incentive than to lower the death count to COVID-19 than Donald Trump himself. So if that's if you're out there and you're saying this is not that big of a deal, everything's overblown, Democrat governors are doing it, then Donald Trump is right there with it.
Except
and
for
Donald
the
Trump
deep
is part of
state
the
people
conspiracy.
that are in control of the CDC. I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying that's what I mean. Some
What does the
people would just
CDC?
say. Some people
But
would
what
just
does the
say, "I don't
CDC
trust the
gain out of that?
goddamn thing." Oh,
What does the
more
CDC
funding?
gain out of faking deaths
More
for
funding?
what?
Sure. I'm not saying I believe it. I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah, they're not going to get more funding. We realize now the CDC is basically a third testicle. Nice to have, not needed. The NIH is not getting any more funding. Matter of fact, we already crushed the CDC funding that real money makers for them, studying drunk monkeys and syphilis and all the other stupid shit, obesity. We already cut all that stuff out. All their fun stuff has already been cut out. The last thing the CDC wants is funding to go and have to travel and look for actual investigate diseases. They don't want to do that.
Right.
They want to study eating too much McDonald's, what happens when syphilitic monkeys fuck. This is what they've been getting paid for, and frankly, not a lot of money. We're using all that money for ventilators, PPE. Give me a break. We don't give a shit.
Either that, or the NIH just wants to pay the Wuhan virus laboratory to investigate and track and catalog coronaviruses. $3.7 million.
Well, we did. I mean, we gave that Chinese lab that eventually leaked it. We gave them money over the years.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to help China become a united fighter with us to solve the diseases that come out of their wet markets. That turned out real well.
Yeah, that was a.
I'm not saying that there's not rampant stupidity going on here, but these agencies are not getting a lot of money. This is not a global conspiracy, and what it is a global catastrophe led by the ineptitude and the incompetence of the Chinese Communist government, with complicity from the World Health Organization and other countries that allowed China to hide the truth for too long. It's inexcusable. It should be something that's brought up under the UN's Court of Crimes Against Humanity. I mean, it's that bad. It is. It's horrific what they did and what they allowed. So,
now, do you think that was Xi personally, or was it someone below?
Well, certainly we know how Chernobyl worked, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I saw the HBO documentary, and I've seen a couple others. It wasn't until it was too late that Gorbachev was even really notified about it.
And what did he do?
Well, he put together some task force and tried to
cover it up.
Yeah, but the people below him were covering it up before then for the first week.
This was never about. This was never about a bat at a wet market, or biting a dog and a dog licking a person. What this was is we now have intelligence that says what it was, and it was the Chinese were working on a known strain of this SARS-2 type, and they were trying to prove that they could fix it. We knew what they were doing. We toured the goddamn lab. We gave them money. What happened was they had an intern handling this shit. I mean, think about that. An intern who goes and then infects a spouse or partner or whatever, and then goes to the wet market, and then from there it's just wildfire. And that's how it got out of the lab. I mean, it's not a weaponized biological weapon type of thing. That this lab wasn't even graded for that. It's just stupidity.
Well,
and they chose to hide it.
I know in our BSL level 4 labs, they have multiple redundancies, and if someone really got scratched with the bat or whatever happened, they go into the slammer. That's what they call it. It's a quarantine room before they even leave the protected biosafety level 4 area. There's an actual submarine slammer room, and they go in there for 30 days.
Yeah, and most of our high grade stuff is either military or quasi-military contractors, and they sell their souls in order to work on what we work on. This isn't somebody there's no live bat in the lab, okay? There's none of that shit. It's a petri dish. Yeah. Somebody got infected, and because they know what the hell they're doing, they're an intern. So, and they go home and they infect somebody else, and then they go to the wet market, which everybody knows is the breeding ground And it's time somebody says it. The Chinese people are backwards, godless, hedonistic people. They're not worldly. They're not hygienic. They're just very populous. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. That's really it. And until America is ready to take off the rose-colored, politically correct glasses and deal with China as it should be dealt with, we're going to put ourselves at risk for something like this.
Well, I mean, this was about as big a wake up call as you could ever get.
I think it could have been worse, even. And the fact that it wasn't means you can never allow yourself to put yourself in that position again. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, God, you just can't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it would be tantamount to having a family of 6 kids and saying my parents never locked the doors when I was growing up. I'm not locking the doors, and somebody breaks in and threatens to murder your family, and you just barely get away, or whatever happens, it stops the guy from doing it. If you don't get a lock for your front door, then maybe I hate to say it, but are you asking for it? So how many times have we gone through? We've gone through 3 of these already. We traced 2 of them back directly to the Chinese wet markets.
Mm-hmm.
How many times are we going to let this thing happen? It's almost how many, shame on us now. I mean, I think we're past the fool me once. I mean, fool me twice, fool me. What do you say on the fourth fool me? I'm
Mm-hmm.
an asshole. That's what you say. You know, fool fool me
Yeah, I
4
mean,
times. I'm an
the
asshole.
world was just lucky as hell that that first SARS didn't go,
Mhm.
exponential, because that one had a 15% fatality rate.
Well, what happens is it kills everybody so fast it actually dies out. Like
Mm-hmm.
Ebola. This thing is managing to be one of the slickest that we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's uh it's keeping the host alive, which is the dream of all viruses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is to, stay healthy in a healthy subject, and then as a course of nature, kill off the ones that are not healthy. That's just nature, man. That's Mother Earth
Mm-hmm.
right there. I mean, that's how shit works. So I think it'll be a while if you have comorbidity, you have underlying symptoms, you have obesity, diabetes, asthma. It's going to be a long time before you just decide to go out and live your life like you did 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fact we have to face in America. We just do. And for the rest of us, there is an opening, and we need testing accessibility. We need testing on the antibody front, and we need testing on whether or not we have it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer we keep people away from going to big operations like a big company, or hell, even a ball game, for God, do you know how many people we could test, Obi, if we had an opening day at every other major league stadium, and we had CDC and state health authorities have a 10 up every 10 rows of cars, and people are doing, and we have enough Abbott cartridge for
Mm-hmm.
a 15-minute test, and we can find out. I mean, you've got to get the people.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get the people, you've got to have an event, because these drive-in things are not working anymore.
Right.
They're
I mean,
sporadic and
it's hard when you can't even leave your house.
uh Kovefe Kim is saying this has been shown to have been possible potential biological weapon. Now everybody from up and down the military and public offices, they said that this is not what a biological weaponized virus looks like. I have no reason to doubt that. So no, I don't. And plus, that lab and where it came from is not that type of lab. Chinese government officials don't allow American diplomats to go through their military grade biological weapons labs. That doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
We went through there 2 years ago. We sent word back through cable from Beijing embassies to America saying this is not a secure lab. We got to watch out for this shit. And it turns out they were right.
Right. I mean, the NIH wouldn't be funding Chinese military bioweapon research.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't mean they might not have been doing it, or it doesn't mean they're not doing it somewhere else. I'm sure they are. I don't trust them for 1 second. I'm sure they have smallpox in a lab somewhere they're working on right now. Even though there's only supposed to be 2 places in the world that have smallpox.
Yeah, but we still have well, if they genetically modify it, we'd be fucked.
Right.
But we have eradicated that.
We've eradicated it. We
And
also threw away all our vaccines we had.
yeah, I like to think that that's not true, but that's what that's what everybody has agreed to.
Fortunately, true. We didn't want to pay the $10,000 a month in refrigeration costs to keep our stockpile of something like 200 million smallpox vaccines. So we threw them in the dumpster.
So, I mean, there's a lot of people here, from what I can gather from the chat. I mean, there's like 50-50. They're the ones that deal with what's happening and they're looking at it in the context of what's happening. And then there's another group that is just not ready to accept what's happening or why it had to happen. And so that's an important reason why I reached out to you earlier today is like, how many times have you found yourself going up and down? Like,
Quite a few.
or get to the point where you're like honestly worried about, am I going to get what I need? Am I going to get the unemployment? Is that going to come through if I have to stay unemployed for a certain period of
Yeah,
time?
I'm worried about that. My boss applied for that PPP, Payment
Hmm.
Protection Plan, and he did that last week, and I think it went through. Because I told him to tell me, listen, if that thing doesn't go through, I'm not going to get my paycheck. Let me know so I can sign up for unemployment.
Yeah.
But you know how those websites are right now.
Well, New York is
They're
overwhelmed.
overwhelmed.
Texas is
So I might
overwhelmed.
not, if I have to sign up for unemployment, I might not get it for a month. They said they'll backfill it and pay you back in a month, but then that's me with a month without money, without a paycheck coming in. So yeah, I think
I,
about that every morning.
and what's the status now? Like, is it project by project or like,
All the jobs that we were going to be on
yeah.
2 weeks ago are still there waiting to get started up again.
So you're at this point, you're just looking at what Cuomo's saying, and you're thinking to yourself, this could very well go for me 30 more days.
Yeah, I could be on a month long paid vacation,
And
which I'm not complaining about, honestly.
knowing that the PPP program, while it was running low, they lowered the available amounts to cover payroll to people to try to conserve some of that money. You're not even aware if your boss had to lower his amount that he was even seeking.
I don't know because he applied for it last week, well before the money was running out, but it's a different,
Mm.
applying for it is different than getting approved and getting the
Yeah, I
stamp and
mean, I'll
getting
be
it
frank.
fully gone.
If he missed one, comma or period
No,
on
no,
that thing, they put you on the back of the
he
line.
uses ADP, and they put
Mhm.
together a folder for him of all the information, all the payroll info, everything,
Yeah,
and he just had to drop it into an email and send it to the bank. And he knows
yeah.
the
Well,
owner of the bank; it's a small bank, and he said, "Yes, we'll
mhm.
do it for you." It's just
Yeah, that's the problem. Small
didn't
bank
go through.
means back of the line again. I mean, that's the problem. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP, they came in and just started. They took the bulk of all of these things. The smaller, I mean, provided he didn't have a huge ask, a small bank should be able, everything should be facilitated.
Yeah.
There were a lot of small banks that got decent sized companies that came to them because they've always worked with them
Hmm.
for their payroll issues and everything, inventory and otherwise. And they said, I don't have that money in the vault to even lend you. I don't trust the federal government. I'm sorry, I'd love to help you, but you're going to have to go talk to one of the bigger banks,
Hmm.
and that's a shame. And I think this is Pelosi's game.
Hmm.
that she would like to see people like you, small business people, tend to be a little bit more Republican,
Mm-hmm.
depending on where they live. But most small business people tend to be a little bit more enterprising, and you know, they tend to vote Republican because of that idealism.
Mm-hmm.
Start your own business, get your own stuff together, and small business employees tend to like that. And you're getting screwed because there's not a $5 billion bailout for the New York City hospital system.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see. I guess it's a to be determined.
What we're gonna have to give up to get what we need is just gonna be a real hard pill to swallow. But at this point, I'm willing to swallow it. I mean, if they want a couple $100 billion for hospital reimbursements, I'm okay with that as long as they can't use it to backfill their budget
Mm-hmm.
problems. So maybe we can come up with something, but it's got to happen within the next week, because every day people try to keep people on their payroll is just so hard. It's much easier to just for your boss to just say, okay, sorry, man, file for unemployment. I'm going to file for unemployment too, and we'll just wait and see what happens on this. I mean, we're trying to give everybody a chance to stay afloat so we can get back up faster.
Mm-hmm.
But the Democrats don't seem to want that. They want more and more and more border problems between the government and the state and the businesses. They seem to want higher walls, obstruction, so that we end up in this dystopian view of the country, so that it hurts Donald Trump. I mean, I think
So
we'd
they're
all be
playing
stupid.
politics with it.
They're playing politics with it. I think we'd all be stupid not to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I'll make Schumer's life a living hell.
Master of Blackjack wants to know where I live. I guess you can't read my Twitter profile. I live in Pennsylvania, where our stuff is pretty much just as shut down as yours. So, and
Even
I don't get
more.
a $1,200 check from Donald Trump. That sucks, because I'd love to just frame it with his signature in the memo section and just be able to frame that. I don't get unemployment. So I'm curious to how you think that I have a different reality. I am definitely off in worse ways than most people
From
in this time.
from
So,
what I
man,
understand, Pennsylvania is worse than New York.
well, we got him to go open up the gun stores after a legal battle. He had them shut down for 2 weeks. But right now, yeah, we are now not allowed out of our house like you without a mask. We're not allowed to go to a public place.
Mm-hmm.
We're not allowed to enter a store if we do not have a mask on. We are immediately told to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain things that are deemed non essential that we're not allowed to even buy. I mean, we're not Michigan. We're almost New York. But yeah, Pennsylvania's in a bad way. We're in a bad way. We've got an asshole for a governor.
Can you go to a
I'm straight up.
drive-in church?
I'm straight up locked up, dude. I don't even know what this master of blackjack. Probably small size town. I live in the Harrisburg metro area, which is the fourth largest area in Pennsylvania. So I don't know where you live, master of blackjack, but I live in a metro area. So careful who you judge, man. See, I think the difference here is, like, I look at things as like, yeah, my life might suck right now, but I'm worried more about November 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is through a prism of Donald Trump's reelection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to feed my kids, but if I can't eat for 4 days, I'll feed my kids, and I'll be happy not eating for 4 days, as long as I know that this is a road towards reelection of Donald Trump. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about existential threat to our society is happening under a Republican president. Imagine what this will look like with Joe Biden. So all these
Or
people in there fighting over dollars and cents right now. It's there's a much bigger picture out there.
well, someone's saying they saw someone in New York without a mask and glove on today. The executive order doesn't come into effect until tomorrow night at 8 p.m.
Oh wow, we actually did beat you beat you to that one. Wow,
Mm-hmm.
damn.
Governor Cuomo gave us 3 days notice to make sure that we make a mask if we have to.
Yeah.
So kind of him.
Yep.
You know, I don't find it that much of an inconvenience to wear a mask to go into a store. I don't spend that much time in the store for the most part.
Yeah, I don't. Well, yeah, my wife. So my mother-in-law made our mask for our family, and they
Mhm.
just happened to be a um a floral pattern onto a very almost teal colored green. I was like, well, clearly I'm not wearing these things out of the house, but it works, well enough for my wife to occasionally make that run
Mhm.
in and out. It just goes so fast, man. I'll tell you, when you've got the two kids eating all the time, and it just she's gone to the store about, I'm gonna say, an average of 1.5 times a week.
Mhm.
And but Donald Trump sent the money to her. That's with the two deduction checks for the kids as well, because we file married but separate.
Mhm.
And so while I'm not getting a check, I mean, she got some money and basically that was how much money we spent on groceries in the last month.
Mhm.
So Donald Trump just basically paid the grocery bill for the last
Right.
month. But I mean, I think your grocery bill easily was a third or more higher than it would be at a normal time.
Mhm.
But it helps. I mean, obviously, it helped pay the other bills.
That because the kids aren't eating at school now, or?
Well, I mean, I'm still paying tuition at school, which is kind of rough considering we're homeschooling them right now, basically, because the teacher sends like a 2-minute video uh, with work to do, and then my wife has to do it with them. I try to do it, but I get a little frustrated as a quote unquote teacher. I would prefer them to start reading Socrates or Aristotle or whatever, and they're only 6 and 7. So I have a short temper on that stuff, but yeah, it's a different time, man. It's she's you're still paying a lot of stuff that you don't even use anymore, and I think
Mhm.
that's that Americans don't want to give up.
Mhm.
So, and I actually feel bad, but like I'm not going to cancel my gym membership, but half of that is because it's a pain in the ass to start back up again because I had a good deal when I signed up with it or whatever. But the other half is that gym is already hurting, man. It's closed down.
Mhm.
Do I want to just dump some water on that Titanic? It's only $15 a month or whatever. It's you got to like balance up what you want to do. There are some things that you need, and there's some things in your life right now that maybe you don't need. But I guarantee there are not a lot of people canceling their Netflix subscriptions right now, or curbing down on their cable cost or whatever.
Mhm.
It's it's a personal lifestyle choice that you got to make.
Very true.
Mhm.
Well, someone on Twitch says, "My life has not changed for me. I never left the house. We have always been homeschooling and working from home for years. It's the same as it ever was."
Same as it ever was. I find myself going back to a lot of older Talking Head songs during this crisis. I mean, it's almost like David Byrne knew this was coming. Just yeah, if you're starting to feel a little bit out of flex, go back and listen to some older talking heads, and you'll be like, wow, like, is he talking about right now? Yeah, David Byrne is a genius.
I have to do that at some point. Depends on how long my paid vacation goes on for.
Yeah, well, let's hope it's actually fucking paid.
Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna be real pissed if it's not paid.
Well, you can backfile on your unemployment when it doesn't, but I know it's easier to just get it done this way because that means your job's protected, your boss's projects are all protected, ready to go at the minute the notice comes out that
Mm-hmm.
it's lifted in a certain area.
Mm-hmm.
And your rate, I'm sure, has been dropping because you guys spiked up relatively early, I think, up in your area. Didn't you have some areas
What do you mean? Oh
of
yeah,
spikes?
yeah. Our county didn't get hit that hard, but we're close enough where people were an hour and a half north of New York City. So people have their
Yeah.
summer homes and their country homes up
And you
there.
kicked them all out and said, "Don't come up here, bitches."
They all tried
Yeah,
to
we're
leave before the crackdown happened.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So George comes back again, dropping a very generous Andrew Jackson into the chat. Given that both the confirmed cases and fatalities are growing exponentially, in addition to the fact that mortality rate is going up, what are the chances the economic policy change? First, it's only some states that are actually seeing that upswing right now. I think the fatalities are 2 weeks lagging, according to Dr. Burke. So, what we're seeing in New Jersey and New York is kind of depressing, but the hospitalizations are dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even LA started to level off, and we were worried about that thing taking off a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Louisiana, we lost a lot of people, a lot of underlying conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at my state in Pennsylvania, and I look at Florida, shitload of cases, but the mortality rate is bottomed out. I mean, very low, very
Mm-hmm.
low. So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you got these rare instances that remind you how bad this can be if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
The Virginia nursing home, where 42 people just
Right.
expired. I mean, literally. I mean, it's just like that. The nursing home that we got the anonymous tip on in New Jersey today, 17 people were basically in a shed and then stuffed down in a makeshift morgue because they didn't report the deaths. I think you've got these circumstances that are still out there. Obviously, ships not a good idea.
Yeah.
We've got crazy rate of infection in ships. It gives you every indicator that you can't just turn it on and go back out there because you're going to infect too many people, and too many people are going to be infected. But if you go by low rate of incidence and you capture one or two people and you do contact tracing, CDC lands in a helicopter like you see in the movies, and we basically just quarantine people until it goes away. I think we have a much better chance of doing that now.
All right, but so you can't just turn on going back to Yankee Stadium or going
No,
to like
and that
a packed
sucks.
nightclub or something like that. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen. But can we open up, say, Bed Bath and Beyond and like some of the mom and pop type stores that are just, you know,
Yeah.
not really
Uh,
any different than the Target, and you can socially distance and you can wear a
yep.
mask?
I think that's what's pretty clear in their guidelines. When you get into phase two, it's still going to be some social distancing, but you're going to be allowed unless you're over 70 or you have some underlying condition that makes you a little more prone to be frankly killed by this virus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, George is saying no. There was a error on his question. I meant to change by May 1st, given the rate of growth of the virus. Yeah, I think it depends. If it does, we gotta chop uh, $5 super chat. Just drop in and say hello. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
George, I think if we do get a spike, provided we don't get it in some place like Philadelphia or Houston or um, I'm just kind of pulling stuff out of my head here, but Omaha or something like that, where we got to quarantine them off. I think we seem to have a pretty good handle on this stuff. I think there's a lot of lawsuits coming too. I think the only way to get any real relief here is to challenge at the state court level and then appeal to the federal level. If you think your state is doing something that's causing you undue harm or violating your civil rights, you gotta do a pretty big lawsuit. There's a lot of people signing on, and if you get the federal government to join your lawsuit, it can't hurt. It cannot hurt. Just Jake, good joke. Florida professional teams have a lot of experience playing in front of no fans. They will be fine. That's a drum roll shot right there. But yeah, I think it's a lot to ask to actually plan out a month or more of Major League Baseball with no fans. Very easy to test the players every day, all the personnel on the team. No one's going to get infected. It's just asking them to play to empty stadiums. But the revenue comes mainly from the TV for Major League Baseball. And then they do a revenue sharing program, and the stadiums themselves, the team keeps the money from the beer sales, food sales, jerseys and all that stuff. So I think Trump is going to push pretty hard to have some sports going again, because that to me seems like the most draconian aspect of all of this, man. And while I say that, I also want to give some props to the NBA, because without Rudy Gobert testing positive before that basketball game, like right before that basketball game that night, they just suspended the whole goddamn league right when they realized that, what was going on. That kind of, I don't know, quieted the notion in America's mind that this isn't real. It made it a reality. I mean, literally, NHL was right after that, but
that
NBA
week,
was
that
the
was
first one.
Like 2 days later, the March Madness was canceled.
Yeah, which would have been a total disaster. As much as I love it, my favorite sporting event in my whole life. It always happened over my birthday, the first 2 days. It's something I've been enjoying literally since I was 5 years old. I spent my birthday locked up at home. My daughter's birthday is the next day after mine. She had no party, couldn't be with her cousins, friends, anything. Had a a party with just her parents and her sister, and a brownie cake with a big number 6 shoved in the middle of it. But I keep telling them, Obi, that this is going to be something that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives, and that as long as the history books are being written, it's going to have a chapter or two about what's going on right now. It's that big of a deal, and it's also that big of a lift to get this thing out of the ground. I mean, you know what they say, the higher you are, the harder you fall. The same thing goes for the economy. And when you take away all that oxygen and leverage and just when the fundamentals of your economy are dropped and they're buried into the ground like we are right now, and we are topically afloat with the markets because of what we did with that CARES Act, putting so much liquidity, 2-3 years worth of liquidity into the air, that no companies are going to be allowed to fail. So we're not going to have these wild swings in the markets. But it makes the media very angry. If you've noticed, if you read the articles, they're talking about this schizophrenic reality of like 25 million unemployed, but stock market on a bull rally. They're very angry about that.
Mhm.
They don't like that. They want total economic devastation.
Right, and so they could blame it on Trump.
Exactly.
Nice people, the media.
Hmm.
Really nice people. It reminds me of particularly Bill Maher. A few months ago, he was wishing
Yeah.
for that recession.
But I'll say this about him. I mean, he's been crucifying liberals for politicizing the virus too. So
Mhm.
he's one of those guys that just learned from the Solomon words of wisdom of splitting babies, but I'll never like him.
Right.
So, but at least you got to have somebody on the other side to call these people out. I
Mhm.
mean, we're still so far away from the presidential election that my concern is just getting over that, not just a peak of disease, infectious,
Mhm.
the R naughts and the hospitalizations and whatever else. It's like I just want to get on an even playing field again. Because I think
Right.
if we give Trump that even playing field again and get Mitch McConnell on his team, I think we can do some serious damage.
Mhm.
And I mean good damage to the narrative that we can't come back from this. I think we can. Perturbed Sun dropping in saying, Adam now, Trump. Or should Trump campaign during this counter Biden? I don't know how you campaign. I mean, I like the question, but Obi, I'll drop it in your lap. I mean, how do you? I mean, you're a guy who has covered every rally, covered every speech. You're a guy that people
Mhm.
go to when Trump is talking. How does Trump campaign
You can't.
right now?
I don't know. Digitally, it's basically what he's doing at these press briefings. He's kind of pitching a little bit
Hmm.
here and there. But I don't know. Can you do a digital rally? I guess it's not the same thing at all. I don't see how that would work. No, you just, what are you going to do? We're just going to have to wait. In a couple
Yeah,
months,
but
you give everyone
yeah,
Trump masks and they go to the rally and wear the mask.
I think you get closer to the fall. I think in some states where we need to shore up support, I think we could do a social distance approved rally, with like, 3 seats in between them. You can control a lot when you
Mm-hmm.
do a rally. And I think we'll do them. Fox will cover them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
but the point is, it's not equal. Joe Biden is another one of these people who he, he I think wins by not being able to talk in public, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think you got this dual situation where Trump needs to feed off the public, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got Biden who is just ecstatic that he has an excuse not to be in front of a group of people. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Very interesting dynamic. One that we don't need to delve into yet because we are in April, you know.
Now everyone is saying, "Uh-oh, the Democrats are going to get the mail-in ballots passed in every state." And I'd like you to dismiss that rumor. I know they want
Hmm.
to, but they're not going to. Trump's not going to sign that bill, right?
Well, it wouldn't be a federal bill anyway. It would never get out of the Senate. So what they're talking about is state bills, and they tried it here in PA, and that's the one thing we took out. I mean, we updated some things in our voting election code, but that was not something we're going to allow. So it depends again on the state makeup of the states. And
Mhm.
most states that have Democrat chambers on both sides and a Democrat governor, um, we're not going to win that state anyway. So
Or they already have it.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So I mean, the disturbing part is I don't like states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania having liberal ass governors that we have to contend with.
Mhm.
That's not fun. But in each state, I believe there's at least one chamber of Republicans. I know in Wisconsin, two in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure about Michigan. I'm sure they have one.
But what about like in Virginia where they just executive order did it?
Yeah, and frankly, I don't have any hope of winning Virginia regardless. I mean, but it would still impact how we do with the congressional races. You're right. Same thing with ballot harvesting in California. How are we going to win back those seats in Orange County if they're just going to do the same damn thing they did before? The only hope we really have of turning the tide on a state that we should have won and we lost 2 years ago was Arizona, because we allowed a lot of chicanery in Maricopa County. I think we got crazy chemtrail Kelly Ward in charge of the party. I think we're going to make sure we don't have any issues allowing them to do things that are not legal. I'll call it right now. I think McSally will eke it out, and I think Donald Trump wins Arizona by a couple of points. That's not a concern of mine. I think Donald Trump wins North Carolina. I think Donald Trump wins Florida. Unfortunately, that's only about a quarter of the ball game. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot of work left to do.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, fundraising is drying up right now. In case your phone isn't blowing up like mine is every day
Oh,
from the
it
Trump
is.
campaign, it's insane, man. I mean, they want money,
I thought
and
they had a
it's
good
just tough.
I thought they had a good month or a good quarter.
I don't know about this quarter.
I
uh,
thought it was good. Or it was
well,
much better than Biden's anyway. I mean, I guess that's
yeah, I
not
think the
hard.
early part shorted up, but I think as people start to run out of money, it's just like we're gonna hit a wall here.
Right.
So some people are equipped for this stuff. Some people sock money away, and you know what? When there's blood in the streets, Obi, buy. I have friends that keep a lot of cash on hand and wait for an opportunity. And my God, I mean, this is the opportunity. There's gonna be a lot of Americans that get go from well-to-do to rich because they just happen to have the ability to stock some money away. And but most Americans are debt heavy and are
Mhm.
going to have to ride this out. It's going to be a tough storm, and I'm right there with the rest of them.
Mhm.
And we're doing what we can, shifting over, going to lower, you know, uh, rates, and whatever we can do to make sure that we can pay those tuition bills and make sure that the groceries are covered and all that other stuff. But everybody's got to cover priorities. I mean, it's just not an easy time, and I want to let everybody know that I appreciate how hard it is right now for everybody, but I also want them to understand that in my heart of hearts, I don't question anything that Donald Trump has done or when he has done it. And I think, matter of fact, had he messed this up and had we accumulated death into the I'm sorry, yeah, definitely six figures, it would be impossible to win an election, just impossible. So
Mhm.
the only chance you have is to mitigate death and then try to ramp up the economy as quick as you can. So he's halfway done with the job. I just hope that you'll support him.
Mhm.
And we say this a lot, and it's really hard to do. Everybody is hurting, like literally everybody is hurting. But if it comes to losing your apartment, you have to follow the rules of engagement that are currently in play, which is you can't be evicted, you can't be foreclosed upon, they can't repossess your car. You need to be proactive. You have to call your creditors and just say, listen, I ain't got no money coming in. You know it and I know it. And what are you going to do to me? And I really wish people would just fight back as consumers right now. Fight back, because you know what? The big banks at the end of the tunnel are the ones that are going to get bailed out by the government. So I don't want anybody to feel like they're un-American, or they're, or they're weak or whatever. Hit back. Hit back. Don't fall asleep at night worrying about your car getting repossessed or your credit rating going down, or God forbid, eviction and foreclosure. That stuff has all but been suspended nationally. So make some proactive phone calls. Chances are you're going to make financial decisions right now in your life that are going to help you moving forward in your life, because we're all out of that la la land where everything's awesome and there's always another pot of gold under the rainbow, like every American thinks, right? No, this is a time to take up for yourself and be your own advocate, and fight back, because that bank is going to get bailed out. And don't be afraid to tell them they're going to get bailed out by the government. You're not. So fight back hard. I want to thank, again, Jen Marie Rao. We appreciate that. And Cherie says, we know the economy is hurting right now, but we will hurt a lot more if Biden wins. So please support the president. And I think we all can support the president. And the president's got a shitload of money. So please don't take any grocery money out to send to Trump. I know people might be pissed off in the campaign if they heard me say that. But if you're not in a position to financially support campaigns right now, then try to recover, and we'll pull something together in September and October, and we'll support the president. But right now he's doing all right. And the people that are making money right now in this economy will be there because they know Trump is what saved them. And so I don't want anybody to worry about that shit, to be honest with you. And if you think Obi's working for free tonight, he's not. Obi will be receiving a cut of all income tonight, because frankly, talking to me for 2 hours, you deserve to get paid. At least that's what my wife tells me every day.
The same goes the other way too. I can't listen to myself on the replay. I can't do it.
So we will bicker, I think, as a group, across Twitter, across some of our conversations here. We're going to have different opinions. We're all in different places. So how the hell would we not be? As long as we're all behind the common factor of November 3rd, and knowing that, God forbid, something like this happens and Joe Biden is not, I mean, it's unthinkable, and our families and our own lives would be in peril. Our economy would be socialized overnight. It would be horrible, unthinkable loss to our freedoms. So
it would be the end of the country.
It would be, and I'm not a hyperbolic guy by nature, but it would be pretty close to the end.
Or it would be a civil war. Either way, it wouldn't be so good.
Well, like I said today on Twitter, I mean, I think we're approaching a cold civil war where, like, blue states are going to try to stay out of business longer than red states, and it's going to be pretty obvious what's going on. They want to sink the economy as long as they can, and I think I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt while there were peak deaths and infections, but now those rates are falling. And I think we have higher capabilities by far. We have more PPE. We have more test kits. We have more convalescent plasma. We have antiviral treatments coming out every day, being more effective. I think we've got more fast tracking of vaccines than we've ever had in the history of the country. So listen, I don't think we're going to suffer through this, no matter what Fauci says about next fall and winter, not going into next year. Just everybody keep the faith, and also, you never want to open a door to this, because this is pretty much shared and equal pain. But if there's somebody that's really hurting, we're we may not be able to get them money directly as we have in the past, but we can use the channels of connections we have in government to help them get what they need. Don't If you know of somebody that's honestly it's a bad situation and you believe them or you have proof of it or whatever, there are programs out there right now. There are people, the government agencies, everything willing to help. Please don't let anybody suffer anxiety to the point where they consider something bad
Mhm.
or doing something reckless, or and that's another part of the reason we're here 3 times, if not more, a week, is you have people in here to talk to, and not just us, in conversation here and on Twitter, and you can reach out to them, and you wouldn't be the first, you know, to do that.
Mhm.
It's not, and we don't share it any wider than we have to, and we don't name it out loud. But Obi knows this to be true. Glenn knows this to be true. I know it to be true. We have helped people that lied to us, scammed us, and I don't think we spent too much time regretting it because we took a chance on people that we believed. We've also been in a position to help people one way or another who needed it for real. And I'll take helping one person who needs it for real and messing up 4 other times if that's what it takes. This is a tough time and we should all be together on one side. And that's the side of the people that believe in democracy, the Constitution, and the reelection of Donald Trump. So there are my final words of the night, Obi. And approaching the midnight hour,
Fair enough.
I would encourage you to give your final comments before we wrap up here.
Well, I gotta go to bed because I gotta go to work in the morning. Oh
I
wait,
like this.
I just
Yeah,
had a
I
I
was
just
gonna
had a
say I wish
flashback.
that was true.
No, I don't know. I guess I would just say hang in there, everyone. We're gonna get through this. Whatever it is. A virus, supposedly. I think we'll I think we're gonna be in a good shape by the fall. Just all around. The next I think we already went through that hardest week, I think. That week that Donald Trump said it's gonna be a rough week. Hopefully we're on the downhill with the deaths and everything. And let's see. Hopefully we can open the stores back up at least. Hopefully in Michigan they can go and buy seeds and garden hoses. And maybe recall that governor, the half-wit governor there.
Yeah, the half-wit.
I mean,
She's something else, man. Whew.
something else.
So I think in short, we're not exactly all in the same hot tub, but the water's still pretty hot wherever you're at. And it can't go on forever. This is America. This is something new. We always figure it out. We always come back stronger. And it's important to us that you guys be okay. And we'll have our little tiffs. I may bark at some of you on here every now and then because I don't like the tone, which because I think of 31,000 people dead, and I know numbers like that over a 40 period day or whatever, or a 40 period of days bothers me, is because then I think a lot of this stuff triggers right back to when your grandfather died, right at the beginning of this stuff. It started to trigger a lot of other thoughts for me of like, what would happen if my grandmother, who went through a very short illness, but would have died of this had she contracted it, or in her 90s, and how many World War II vets are dying. And then I think of Normandy and 30,000 troops dying over 3 weeks, all that stuff. But what would happen if we stopped at Normandy, Obi? What would happen if we stopped at Normandy? We wouldn't have won the damn war.
Mm-hmm.
It still pick up, and we still lost another 30,000 through the Battle of the Bulge and beyond in order to get to Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have more death. We're going to have more disease, but you've got to win the war. And if you want to say you're a wartime president, which I think he is, then we've got to support him as a wartime president. You can't spend all your time denigrating the circumstances that make it a war. It's real. And I assure you that there are more people dead of this than you know, not less. So it's time to just stop using this isn't a real situation. It's more time to go after your governor for trampling on your civil rights, regardless of whatever this virus is. If you're a young, healthy person and you know that you've got to get to work to feed your family, and then you have rights. I don't have any problem with you going to your state capital and protesting. And I don't have any issues with that. But if we're going to say that Donald Trump is a wartime president, give him the authority to enact a DPA, take over GM, produce 100,000 ventilators, basically commandeer the world supply chain, and then turn around to ourselves and say this isn't a real crisis, we're idiots. I think we need to find a balance there. And the balance is a real crisis. A lot of people have died, and not all of them are pathetic, fat, old, McDonald's addicted, trailer trash people. And I think a lot of us are quick to go that way with our mind. No, we lost a lot of Vietnam, Korean War veterans. We lost a lot of police officers. We lost firefighters, retired, active, teachers, principals, doctors that took care of us when we were growing up. We lost a lot of people, and it just so happens that it just wasn't the cause of death for Obi's grandfather. It very well could have been at that time in that place. So you get into a place where you can see it from inside of your own eyeballs, because too often in America we don't empathize. And that's bad. We got to be shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm. That's the way we move forward as Americans. That's how we get through death and horror and come out the other side better with better technology. We lead the world. There's not going to be a Japanese firm, Obi, or a South Korean firm, or a Chinese firm, or, a German firm that's going to come out with all the biotech. So something like this never happens again. It's going to be the United States of America. And we will create wealth over this.
And the whole world is going to buy it from us.
And the whole world's going to buy it from us, along with a lot of ventilators. So, and we not buy it from us per se, but they're also going to, they're 9 out of 10 chance that they're going to be using the vaccine that we put into the system by November of this year. And so I put your faith in America.
You could have fun with that. I'm not taking no vaccine.
Well, you don't have to at your age or whatever, but I want to protect my parents and, other people that are, over 70 or anybody else who has underlying. I want to know we have an effective vaccine so they can get back to life, because what we're doing now with this, what we put out today, it doesn't really give a return to life for people that are elderly or over 70, even without underlying causes. And you want to talk about depression. You want to talk about depression leading to medical conditions not related to a virus. Trap people away from their families, trap people away like that long enough, they'll die.
And they got bottles of pills in their medicine cabinet too.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of that. I think we got to get it done as fast and as hard as we can. And obviously, it's not going to be a Bill Gates thing. So people, Joanne, I love you. Don't bring Bill Gates up in here. We don't care about him. Most of his work is done outside in third world countries, developing countries. Trump will never let him spearhead anything or administer anything in the United States of America. fact, case closed. Stop worrying about it. So Obi, as in tradition, I'm going to sign off, and when I do, I'll disappear. Two of you will appear at once. You'll have to X out your one side, and then you will give a 2-minute closing statement.
Okay.
Hopefully, more eloquent than Glenn does, but we'll see. All right. I love everybody. Thanks, and we'll see you Saturday night, 11 o'clock. Thanks,
Okay.
Obi. It was great talking to you. We'll do this again soon.
You too. See you. I got it right. Getting the hang of this thing after 2 years finally. So, well, I'm over at Glenn's using his fancy new computer, so a little tiny bit different than my rig. Just a little bit better. I don't know what else I have to add. Really not that much. I guess an early Thursday night. It would be about normal if I had to go to work, but no work for me. I'm on paid vacation, baby. Yeah, thanks. I thought I did an awesome job too. Wicked, man. Until next time, always remember and never forget.
Glenn is the best.
Glenn is the best. China is the worst. And keep your sticks on the ice. I'll see you next time.